Coming up on this episode of the Spiro Podcast.
So even if you're not facing this type of crisis, the time will come when you need some support, when you need some backup, and the thing can't rely totally on you.
Welcome to the Spiro Podcast, managing your real estate photography and videography business. With your hosts, Todd Kivimaki and Craig Magrum.
Hi, and welcome to the Spiro Podcast, managing your real estate media business. Spiro is a software platform. It's designed to help you manage your day-to-day real estate media business, and ultimately, we'd love to help you grow and scale the business as well. I'm Craig Magrum, host of the podcast. Welcome back to another week. I am flying semi-solo this week. Todd is at PMRE as we are recording this morning. He'll be back by the time this gets published, but that's why Todd is not here this week. He's a busy guy. He's a busy guy. But we just got back a week or two ago. Well, it's been, I think, about 2 weeks now from the REPP 2025 conference, which is also in Las Vegas, and had an absolute blast. And I'm really excited over the course of the next, month and a half or so, other than some breaks for holidays. We're going to be featuring some of the speakers that were at the REPP 2025 conference this year and sharing a little bit about their presentation, just kind of recapping that. And I always love having guests on the podcast and hearing their stories, because we each have a story in our business, right? And we can learn from each other. That's what this podcast is all about, is learning from one another and sharing our successes so that we can sharpen each other and help each other's businesses grow in our various markets. So normally we would do some Spiro announcements, industry announcements. With Todd not being here, we're just going to kind of move on right past that. But thank you so much for taking the time to be back this week. I am really excited to introduce this week's guest as we kick off this continuing REPP 2025 recap and the guest speakers that were a part of that. Excited to introduce our very first guest for this season from that conference, Mr. Chris Powell of Lighthouse Studios. Chris, welcome to the Spiro Podcast.
Thank you so much, Craig. It's really an honor to be here, and I wish Todd could be here too, but we'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, so full disclosure to those of you watching and listening, when I scheduled Chris, it didn't dawn on me, Todd is turning right around and going back out to Vegas for the PMRE conference. And if just a quick note, Chris, maybe you can chime in on this as well. If you've never been to one of these industry conferences, we just want to really, really encourage you. Take the time out from your business, invest in yourself, invest in your business, and get out here, because the relationships that are formed, the things that you learn, the spark that gets reignited for the passion we have for this industry is well worth all of that investment. Chris, would you agree?
Absolutely. I was actually just writing a review for REPP yesterday because it's such a transformative conference, and you work all year long. And especially for us, the busy time is all throughout the spring and summer and fall, and you can get kind of worn out. And then you go to this conference surrounded by people who are, trying to achieve the same goals, and they're of the same mind, and they share your values. And you get re-energized and reinvigorated about the business, which for me is huge. It really helps you connect with people who have the same mindset and goals as you. And it sets you up for success for the year ahead. So it's huge for me every year. And to be in that room at REPP and look around and see that everyone there wants you to succeed and you want all of them to succeed. And there's so much support and care for each other. It's a really amazing experience.
It is. I had started to kind of go into, I don't want to say a downward spiral, but I was starting to get a little stale. Just after a while, when you shoot so many houses, it can kind of turn into a production job. I think you could probably agree. And I've had the added challenge. We just did an episode a couple of weeks ago on hiring. I've had the challenge of, in the market that I'm responsible for, both as the photographer and the business development specialist, I've been the only photographer all summer since like about April of this year.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And I was at capacity. Like, I had no more room for any additional clients. And so I've not been prospecting business. And I've just kind of, it's like, I feel stuck, right? We've just had a challenge in my market specifically, for whatever reason, in finding a photographer. but I thought that's not going to be a forever thing. So I started thinking as I was listening to the speakers, I don't remember who was up on stage when I started this, but I started a goal list, because the energy of each of the speakers and just the room in general just started getting me to dream again, right? To kind of visualize what could be in my market and what I could be doing better as a business development specialist. So I started writing just a bulleted list of items of goals and tasks I wanted to do the second we get another photographer in my market. And Chris, the good news is we have a candidate.
Amazing.
Oh yeah. I'm super excited. So by going to that conference, it just, like I said, it got me to dream again. And now I've got a plan of action that as soon as that guy's ready to start shooting and take some of the load off of me so that I can develop business again, I've got that plan of action in place and I could just hit the ground running. So it's those sorts of things that you can really benefit from by going to either REPP or PMRE or whatever. So
yeah, that ability to start dreaming again is huge, because it makes you realize what's possible for your business, because you're seeing and meeting these people who have done it in theirs. They've gone before you, they've paved the way, and you can take what you learn from them and all the hard lessons they've learned, all the mistakes they've made along the way, especially from people like Todd, who's been here for so long and has learned so much. He can teach us so many of those pitfalls to avoid. And especially when it comes to managing a larger team and working with larger clients and really stepping into that leadership role. There's a lot that many of us don't know, because we come in here, we're photographers, we're entrepreneurs, and we're just doing the thing solo. And it's great, it's fun, it's fast paced, but it really changes when you have to start leading a team.
And that's what we're going to dive into, because Chris's topic at the conference at REPP was from resisting hiring to loving it. And man, Chris, your topic struck me so much, because we've shared this on the podcast before. I've been in management before. I managed a radio station here in my area. And during that experience, I learned that I really don't like to manage. I'm not super comfortable with it. I would rather work shoulder to shoulder with people rather than be the out front leader. And so I had gotten to a point in my business before I joined Todd's Wow Video Tours, where I had to make a decision. Am I going to continue to grow the business, or am I going to keep it boutique and very small and very specialized, and I'm still doing the bulk of the work? Versus Todd, who is all about growing it and growing as a leader and being that out front leader. And Chris, we're going to dive into this, but that's the journey you went through as well. And that leadership development part of it that you shared with the audience really intrigued me. So that's kind of the setup, but let me have you introduce yourself and, tell us where in the country you are, where your company is, and maybe a little bit of a backstory of how you even got into real estate media.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm Chris Powell. I am based in Seattle, and my business is Lighthouse Studio here in Seattle. And I've been a full-time professional photographer since 2016. So I came to this industry through a photography background. Okay. So some of us come through more of an entrepreneurship background, or some just start kind of learning it online and don't necessarily know a lot about photography. And each one of those perspectives has its own set of advantages and disadvantages. And having a more professional, kind of classically trained photography background definitely has some perks as you come into this industry, but there's some disadvantages too, because it can be a little bit harder to let go of sort of that artistic mindset. Maybe that's a conversation for later. But so after doing the freelance photography thing for a few years, kind of shooting all kinds of stuff, shooting for different magazines and studios here in the Seattle area, that all really slowed down during COVID, of course, like many things. And I think a lot of people probably started their real estate media businesses around that time in 2020, and I'm one of them too. So I started learning about the business and the process and all that. And I knew how to take decent photos, and I kind of understood the creative side of it, but I didn't know how to work with realtors and what they were really looking for and what went into making a successful real estate listing. So I learned about that at that point, and it was Eli who taught me all those things and showed me the ropes there. And then after a few years of that, I was doing well solo. I was feeling successful, but I was really starting to feel the negative effects of doing it alone. I know you understand, Craig, how it is when you've got those busy days with multiple shoots lined up, and then you've got to go home and upload, and then the next morning you're delivering and starting the whole thing all over again. And there's really no margin. And I got to a point where that lack of margin was negatively impacting me. And it can be fun doing the solo thing for a little while. And it feels nice because you have control, so it kind of feels safe in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And that's where I had to shift my mindset. So that's what got us to where we are now. And I'll share some of the story that led me there. But that's a little bit about my background.
Good deal. So what type of photography did you do before? You mentioned magazines. Was it portraiture or landscape, nature, wildlife? What was your initial passion?
Yeah, so the initial passion that got me into it was when I was young. I was in elementary school and middle school and high school. I would take photos of birds in the backyard, and then I would start shooting landscapes and nature and all those sorts of things. So that was kind of the initial thing that got me interested in photography as a kid. But then professionally, I started doing a lot of headshots, and I also worked at REI and their photo studio shooting products for their website. So I did that for a few years, and then just other various types of freelance work. Pretty much, whatever I can get. You know how it is when you're a freelance photographer, and sometimes you're really busy and things feel great, and other times you'll shoot anything because you just want to get a paycheck.
Right. I was the second shooter on 2 weddings. My very first photography mentor, she was an amazing portrait photographer and did a lot of senior shoots, but a lot of weddings. And she was just absolutely fantastic. And she asked me, "Hey, do you want to be a second shooter for me on these 2 weddings?" I'm like, "I'm a little nervous, but I'll try it." And Chris, after the second wedding, I called her and I said, "Dawn, thank you so much for the experience, but I don't think I want to ever touch a wedding with a 20-foot pole again." And she laughed. She's like, "You were only the second shooter. I mean, you didn't even have the pressure." But I get it. That's why I know this is not for me. So much respect to all of you that have come from a wedding photographer background.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Weddings are not for the faint of heart. It's a special skill, a special talent, and it's not one that I have, but I have enormous respect for those who do.
Absolutely. The other thing I've heard about portraiture, and we'll get into your story, I promise. She shared with me an early piece of advice, and it was, "You're going to be as much photographer as you are counselor." And I said, "What?" She said, "People don't like pictures of themselves." I'm like, "Huh." She's like, "You got to talk them through being comfortable with who they are and being in their own skin."
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's really, really interesting. So there's more to portrait photography than just the lighting and the posing and the location. It's actually being able to understand human beings. And I think there's a degree of that even in real estate photography. You might be shooting houses, but you're dealing with a very high stress, emotional transaction for the seller, who they're getting ready to sell the most probably the most expensive asset that they have, and a realtor that has a lot of pressure on them, and being able to manage those relationships and emotions as the real estate photographer, coming in, being calm, being peaceful. Before we get to the rest of your story, what's your experience been in that, Chris?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. I think maybe in any business you end up, dealing more with people, and it's kind of ultimately when it comes down to it, it's how you deal with people and how you approach those situations. But it's very true in real estate when we're going into high stress, high pressure situations, which for us, we're just going in and we're only there for an hour or two, and then we're gone. And that's it. We don't know a whole lot about the behind the scenes and what has gone into that transaction. But there are so many different stories that we hear. And like you said, it's people selling their most valuable asset, and realtors are trying to manage, and they're trying to be a counselor to their clients and also deal with all of the paperwork and all the logistics and whatever else might be going on. We're trying to prep the house. A lot of times we get to a shoot and the realtor's in there, scrubbing walls or scrubbing bathrooms or whatever. And the realtors, they're trying to do their best to serve their clients, so we can do our best to serve our clients to make their load a little bit lighter. And our goal every shoot we go to is to make our realtors' jobs easier. If we can do something just to make their job a little bit easier, make their day feel a little bit lighter, and take something off of their plate rather than putting more onto their plate, then our mission is complete.
That's good. And that creates some loyalty as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. If they feel like you're someone who they can trust, who you enter and they know that things aren't going to get more chaotic, but they'll become more peaceful, that is huge. And that can be everything to a realtor.
Having a good system in place for your business to manage all of that is gold. So invest in your systems for sure. All right, let's dive into your presentation, the Cliff Notes version. Oh,
sure.
So, you mentioned that you started as a solo, real estate photographer, but you got to that point where you were starting to experience, I'll call it some burnout, because of the load of everything that you were carrying. So let's jump off from there. You were initially resistant to the idea of hiring help.
Yes.
What was involved with that?
I knew I wanted to grow the business, and I had a dream of, being this entrepreneur and being this business owner that had more than just a job as basically a freelance real estate photographer. Yeah. And I wanted a team, but I had some limiting beliefs and I had some fear and some excuses. And I didn't think that I would be able to train someone to do the job as well as I could. And I didn't think that my clients would accept somebody else being on site. So it was really just a lack of faith, and the fear and the excuses kept my thinking small. But in the process, they kept my business small too.
Okay.
So I had to kind of, push through and break through these limiting beliefs, but it was a family tragedy, a family crisis really that pushed me through to that next level. So, I got a call, and I never expected it, and it really shifted my world and changed my perspective. So I got a call from my sister, and she told me that she'd been diagnosed with a rare cancer. So I knew when I was talking to her that if I didn't do something to change the way my business functioned, then I would have to choose between traveling to spend time with her and my family or keeping the business afloat. And in that moment, it's like business doesn't matter anymore. When you're faced with something like that, you realize that the importance of the business it's really nothing when you're talking with your family and you're considering the health and time with family and those that you love. So you have this dilemma where it's like the business doesn't disappear. It's still there. Yeah. But in terms of importance, it totally pales in comparison with what's going on. So I had a choice to either put the business on pause, or I could finally take that step and train the team who could operate it without me.
Wow. Yeah, that's tough. So you're dealing with the news that your sister just shared with you, but at the same time, then also trying to make a mental shift to start developing and bringing people on to help you. That's two heavy loads, because either one by themselves is heavy enough to have to try and navigate and deal with. Chris, how did you manage to balance those two things?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the gravity of what was in front of me just helped to really clarify that all of these excuses and fears that I had just didn't matter anymore. I could look at it and be like, so what if I don't train someone perfectly? And so what if a client doesn't want somebody else to be there on site? That's really not as big of a deal as I used to think it was, now that I'm looking at this mountain in front of me. So I just made a choice. I decided I was going to do whatever it would take, and I wasn't going to let the fear stop me any longer. Yeah. And all those limiting beliefs, I was like, I'm just going to ignore them. I'm not even going to worry about them anymore. I'm just going to do this. I'm going to keep stepping forward, and we'll see what was going to happen. But I knew that at that point I would do whatever it took to be able to spend time with my family and with my sister. And I just wasn't going to resist it any longer. And I used to try to wait for everything to be perfect. You just don't have to do that. And you will wait forever if you're waiting for everything to be perfect, because
Right.
nothing's ever going to be perfect. So I had this mission in front of me, and I just decided I'm going to build a real business that will allow me to spend time with my family. So I hired a photographer, and this is back in January at this point. So January 15th, I hired my first photographer.
Okay.
I had no idea what I was doing, and he didn't know what he was doing, so it was great. But with the help of the community, and community is a big theme throughout my story, because with the help of the community, I was able to kind of figure it out, learn lessons along the way, get some tips and advice from friends within the industry.
Sure.
And I was able to get that, figure it out just one day at a time.
Let me ask you this: is you were starting to introduce this new photographer that was part of your team to clients, or you knew that you had to get to that point, what kind of conversation did you have with clients about why they were going to be seeing a new face?
Yeah, so with some of the clients who I had known longer and had a closer relationship with, I was open with them about what was going on.
Okay.
Because I've got some clients who I consider friends who, I would hang out with outside of work, and some of them know you well. And that's actually one thing that I have learned in business, is when you can be open with your clients and with your team about what's going on, whatever challenges or struggles you're facing, whether it's in business or even outside of the business. I think it's good. I think it's healthy to be able to share that, not in a weird oversharing way where you just meet someone for the first time and you're saying way too much, but with your team and with your clients who you're working with frequently. I think it's good to be able to open up with them. And some people are better at that than others. Some are really natural at it. I'm not super natural. It doesn't come easily to me a lot of the time. But I've found that it's really valuable to be able to have those conversations with your clients or with your team, so they know what's going on, they know what challenges you're facing. And then it shifts it from, oh, Chris is just trying to push some other photographer off on me, to, oh, wow, Chris is going through this thing and he's still trying to serve me as best as he can. Yeah. And I want him to be able to get through this with his family. That totally changes it. And I also don't want to make it sound like clients will only accept you hiring if you're going through some crisis, because that's not the case either. I didn't share this story with the majority of the realtors I was working with, but with the ones who know me well. And with others, I think it's still great to share that you're trying to grow your business and you want to be able to serve more clients in your community. And you want to be able to have an impact and build something where maybe you're creating jobs for people, and you're building this thing that can be an asset for your family into the future. And there's going to be a time when you get sick. You might just have a cold or a flu, and you're going to have to decide, am I going to push through and go to a shoot, which, probably isn't the best thing.
Right.
But if you have a team under you and behind you, you can push through in a way that doesn't require you to be going out while you're sick or while you have a broken leg or whatever. So even if you're not facing this type of crisis, the time will come when you need some support, when you need some backup, and the thing can't rely totally on you.
Yeah, you're introducing the human element, right? When we get rolling with business, it's, at least for me, it's very easy to just get caught up in the day-to-day business activities, and it almost becomes, if you're not careful, I hate using this word, but it can almost feel cold, right? Just cold business transactions. It's business. This is what I have to do. It's about making the profit, making the money, and that whole cold capitalist, I'm all for capitalism. Don't get me wrong. That's what drives our businesses, right? But we can forget the human element of the business that we're in, that we're human beings first. We're not money-making machines first, right? We all have families that we love and care for, and we're ultimately doing this for them. And there's important relationships, Chris, your sister. And it allows us, I think, to take a step back and kind of just be human with one another and show some transparency, some vulnerability, and sharing those sorts of things with people that you trust. It makes you human. It makes you relatable. Yeah. And I think that relatable part is really important in building relationships, even within our business, not just relationships in general, but in business as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Showing someone that vulnerability and
Yeah.
not trying to carry everything yourself is
Right.
huge. And I think, some of that might come from insecurity or fear when we don't want to let go of control. But then another part of that is ego and thinking that everything has to be done by us and nobody could possibly do it as well as we can.
Yeah.
And again, I think every entrepreneur deals with that throughout the journey. But the sooner we can kind of set free those limiting beliefs and realize that there are people out there who can actually do these things better than we can, and we're not the only ones. We're not some, magical creation that is the only person who can do this combination of skills. There's other amazing people out there, and to find those and bring them into your business is the most incredible feeling, because you start to realize what's possible. Right. And you realize that your own limited view of what was possible before can now expand. Right. And you're going to have people who can carry this burden with you and push your business into the future, and you'll grow together. And it's a really incredible thing.
Todd has shared a couple of times in past episodes, if you can find somebody that can do what you do 80% as effective, pass it off to them. That's good enough. And
Absolutely,
just keep training them, keep investing in them, getting them up even further. But if they can do 80% of what you do, let them run, let them go with it, so that it frees you up to do other things.
Absolutely, yes. And the amazing thing that I've found is once they're focused on that task, then they'll end up doing better than 80%. And they'll probably eventually end up doing it better than you, because they'll be more focused, right? When we're doing things as the owners, we're working way too many hours in a day and we have a million tasks to do. So those things that we think we're so good at, we're trying to fit in the cracks and make them work wherever we can. But when you trust a team member who's only got this core focus on these, these certain tasks, they're going to end up doing way better. They'll be more focused, they'll be more present, and they'll have the clarity of mind to learn and do those things properly that we just won't as the frantic business owners until we get our own stuff figured out.
Right. So this potential photographer we have joining us in my market, he already does amazing video work, and I can already see that he's going to be better than I am on the camera, both photo and video. And that's what I want. And seeing him grow in how to relate to clients and customers. I want the realtors that I serve in my market to love him more than they love me even. Right. So that he gets the jobs and I can continue to grow things in other areas. So having that kind of care and concern for people and invest in their success, I think is awesome.
Absolutely. And that's such an incredible feeling. We had, shortly after I had finished training our second photographer, we had someone request that he be on site for all of their photos because he did such a great job. And they don't even know who I am. It was our admin doing the communication and the photographer there on site. So if I show up one day, they'll be like, who are you? I want the good photographer. Give me the other guy.
That's awesome. All right. So let's move the story forward. So you had gotten this call from your sister. Paradigm shift in your life and her life, obviously, and in your business. How did things continue to grow and develop as you realized you needed to make the shift to start hiring a team?
Yeah, so I began the hiring process. I got someone on board in mid-January and was training him for a couple of weeks. And like I said, I didn't know what I was doing. So, that first one always takes a little bit of extra time, which is totally fine. And it's a learning process for everybody. So about 3 weeks into that, I got another phone call. And I was driving to a shoot for a brand new client. It was a luxury realtor. And my first photographer was still in training. And he was doing great, but there was still a long way to go to actually get him out in the field. So he wasn't ready to be shooting yet. And my parents called me, and on the phone they said it looked like my sister wasn't going to make it. And she had been in surgery, and her heart had stopped during that operation. So for the first time ever, I had to call a client and say, I'm not going to be able to make the shoot. And I just turned around and got on a plane. Wow. And miraculously, they were able to actually resuscitate her, but she was in the ICU and unresponsive on life support. So that continued over the next several months. And I spent most of my weekends and, pretty much any free time I had getting on a plane to go see my family and spend time with my sister. And she made some progress, but she remained in the ICU. And again, like before, it made all the fears and hesitations seem so small and insignificant because the stakes were so much higher now.
Right.
And all those worries about, oh, the photos won't be good enough, or the agents aren't going to trust somebody else on the team, or they're just not going to want me to hire. It's so small when you face this type of thing.
Yeah.
And it made me realize that what I had been doing was not sustainable. And I couldn't leave the state almost weekly while trying to operate the business alone. So
Right.
again, I doubled down and said, this isn't an option. I can either quit totally, or I can ignore the fear and just build the business. So I finished training my first photographer. I got super focused on that. I hired another one. I hired more on our virtual team, a couple people in the Philippines to help out with the back end work. And I hired an admin locally who could help with customer service and communication and scheduling and all of those tasks. So I really fully staffed up as quickly as possible. Wow. And we went from being a team of 1, just me, to a team of 7. And as all of those pieces came together, I could finally see some relief in the pressure a little bit at a time, until I could finally leave town and there wouldn't be any effect on our ability to serve our clients. So I could finally start to see, kind of through this fog of fear, I could see the light through that. And those months really, they taught me a lot of lessons, and they reminded me of what was truly important and what matters in life. And I'm very, very thankful that I didn't delay any longer. It was really precious time. Because on June 24th, my sister passed away.
Sorry,
and I was able to be there and take the time that I needed for my family. And there wasn't a concern about the business. I couldn't even, couldn't think about it at that time.
Yeah, right,
but the team had my back. So again, it became this thing where, the business is not important in this moment, and it wasn't my focus. It couldn't be my focus. But it was able to keep going, and we could keep serving our clients even in my absence, as the team had my back. So once again, something where it would have been just shutting the business down, which of course in those moments, again, you're not thinking about that stuff, but it's still reality, and you still have bills, and you still have an income, and we still live within reality, right? And you've got. So the process of recognizing the fears that were holding me back and letting go of those excuses, that's what allowed me to be where I was needed most during this really dark time. And the past year has been very challenging. It's been the hardest year of my life, but there's been some growth, a lot of growth through it. And I don't want to imagine what this time would have been like had I not had this amazing team behind me, because I'm really blessed to have some wonderful people on my team, and they were super supportive through everything, and they had my back. They were totally fine with me being away for a little while and me not being as present, and they were just like, hey, if, whatever we can do, let us know. They were there. They stepped up, and I am truly so thankful for that, because it would have been a very different picture to have gone through that without them. To have the support both on the professional side, on the business side, but also on the personal side, just to have those people who I knew had my back. It's really amazing.
So that's a lot of heavy stuff, Chris. And losing someone that close to you is hard. And you and I, we didn't get to talk really a ton at the conference, but we had a couple of exchanges where I kind of picked up on the fact that I think I was pretty sure you are a man of faith, following Christ. And first of all, is that accurate? And then a follow-up to that, what role has your faith in Christ had in navigating this hardest year of your life as a business owner and just as a human being?
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right about that, Craig. And it's a big question and an important one. And in the same way that I said, I wouldn't want to imagine what this would have been like without my team, even more so, times 1,000. I wouldn't want to imagine what this would be like without faith and without the peace of God carrying me through these incredibly difficult times, and being there with my family. And it's the kind of thing that I can't imagine facing alone without having the faith that we will be together again.
Right.
And
I'm imagining some hard conversations with God probably through that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you have a lot of questions and not a lot of answers.
Yeah.
But through that, you have faith that, somehow this is part of God's plan, and somehow this will work for good,
right,
as we're promised. And it's a time where you have to be able to come to peace with not having all of the answers.
Sure.
And it's only the peace of God that even helps us remotely step forward every day and have some level of acceptance of that. And of course, those questions still remain, and
sure,
those struggles and that wrestling is still there.
Yeah.
But we're able to keep moving forward and to look to God and spend time in prayer and looking to his word and to him for peace.
Right. Ultimately, that hope of the resurrection in seeing those that we love again in eternity, because of what he did for us, right?
Exactly. And that hope is what I cannot imagine
living
going without. And I've had this conversation with my parents too, because they've said the same thing. How could someone possibly survive going through this without having that hope that at the end we'll be together for eternity and we'll be with Christ, and all will be restored.
Yeah, man, Chris, thank you for sharing that. I know that's not easy, but I appreciate your vulnerability and just being real with us. We talk a lot about business, but again, there's that human element of we're all going through stuff. So just know that our team is going to be praying for you, just for continued strength and that peace of God that rules our hearts, right, and goes beyond our logic and our understanding. So know that we're committed to that for you, and praying just for the continued success of your business as well. For sure. So obviously, your faith in Christ helping you navigate that, making that decision to take that leap of faith and hiring a team to help you navigate this time so that you could spend it with your family. But that in and of itself is not easy either, because you're going from a creative kind of on their own, making business work, to now having a team that you have to lead. And that's an entirely different skill set. So you're dealing with all this stuff, but you also now have to morph into leader. Can I ask, what did that process look like for you in learning those leadership skills and putting those into practice, learning what those skills are to begin with? How did that all happen for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And
it's a big
happened
question.
along a winding course and a little bit of a bumpy journey, and we're still on that, of course, as we all are. But I think where it started was I started to see the business as something that could actually give back time rather than something that controlled my time.
Oh, wow.
And to get to that point, you have to start to trust your team. So I think the first leadership lesson I sort of learned, and there are a lot of them, but one of the first ones was that you can trust your team. You hired them, right? You're the one who brought them into your business to work alongside you. So you have to be able to trust them. And for me, it started with mornings. My mornings were chaos. So I had to hire somebody to help out with the morning deliveries and the quality control of the photos and all that. So that was kind of the first step in trusting my team for me, and just doing little trainings bit by bit until the VA that I hired could do things really well. But then, as I hired photographers and an admin locally, the leadership steps up, because now you're not just communicating with somebody on Zoom or via Slack. You now have your team all together in one place, and you have to, again, become that leader. So another thing that kind of goes along with trusting your team is serving better by letting go. So I used to think that I somehow wasn't serving my clients if I sent somebody other than myself. But if I didn't let go, my team never would have been empowered to do better work. So like we talked about briefly, you can have specialists that do what they're great at, and that allows you to focus on your strengths. So you can now focus on developing as a leader. And there's a lot of wonderful books on leadership, and there's various courses and all kinds of videos, of course, that you can watch. And that's all good stuff. But when it comes down to it, it's experience that's going to build you as a leader. But yeah, becoming a leader is one of the biggest lessons. And when I presented at REPP, I talked about a variety of lessons that I've learned. I think there were 12 of them kind of over this past year as I had reflected on it. And one of the big ones was you must become a leader. Because when you're solo, you only have to lead yourself, right? You've got to get yourself out of bed in the morning. You've got to go to your shoots. But that's not really leadership. You're just kind of, getting up every day to make your money.
Right.
But when you have a team, now they're going to look to you and they want direction, they want guidance and inspiration, and they're joining you. And there's a degree of risk there that isn't present in most jobs, because you've got this really small business in the world of business, and they're trusting that this thing that you're building is going to be moving forward and making progress.
Yep.
And that's really just based on how much they have faith in you as a person and as a leader. Because you don't have a big company behind you. You don't have, right? You're not Apple or Coca-Cola or something like that. There's no HR department. There's no shareholders. It's literally just you. So they're taking a risk for themselves personally. They might have some family members who are like, what's this company that you're working for? I've never heard of it. And you need to show them that even though you're small and you are not this big business that you want to be, you're not where you want to be yet, that this is moving forward, you're making progress, and also that you're here to serve them and help them grow into whatever life has for them. So one of the values that's really important to me in my business is to see people live the lives that they were made to live. And that might mean that someone's only with us for a few months in a transitionary role, and then they'll move on to something else that suits them better, or kind of that they're a role that they're made to do. It might mean that someone's with us 10 years or more, and I hope that's the case for a lot of our people, of course. But it's my goal to see people really flourish in what they were made to do. That's huge to me. So as part of that, you have to shift your focus a little bit from serving your clients every day to serving your team.
Oh, that's
and
good.
When you do that, you empower them to grow as people, but you also empower them to serve your clients. So now, instead of my focus being totally on how can we serve these clients better, it's how can I serve my team better, which gives them the power to serve the clients. So you just have to shift that mindset. You're not a solo photographer anymore. You're not just a freelancer running around with a camera. You have a duty, really, to take care of the people who work for you. And it's motivating, and sometimes it's scary. I imagine in some ways it's a little bit like being a parent. I'm not a parent myself yet, but I imagine there's some similarities where you hire a photographer and you have to train them and set the level of expectation. And if they don't show up on time or they don't do something right, you have to have that conversation and not avoid conflict. And you can't try to be their best friend. You can't try to be their buddy from the start. You have to first be a leader. And then from that, there can be a wonderful relationship where you are friends, but you can't just try to be their friend in everything and avoid the conflict. So that's something I didn't really talk about in the presentation, but
that's good.
That's been a struggle for me. It's been an area of growth for sure, where, if like I said, if someone on the team is showing up late to a couple of shoots, or if there's a toilet lid left open or something like that, you've got to be able to approach those things directly, and your team will respect you more because of it. Yeah. But you can't just kind of, do what friends would do and be like, oh, no worries, it's totally fine. Like, you've got to approach this stuff. You've got to be direct with your team. And if it comes down to it, you have to be firm, and you have to make sure they know that you're the leader. But from what I've learned in my little bit of experience is they'll respect you more because of it. And all these things I've learned, I know that I'm no expert. I'm new at this too. I'm on this journey with everyone else. But these are just some of the little lessons I've learned along the way.
Chris, such good stuff. If you could suggest one leadership resource that has had maybe the biggest impact on you, what would that one resource be? that you would suggest to those watching and listening right now that are at that same point of morphing into more of a leader of their team role versus serving their client?
So Craig, that's a great question. There are 2 books that have helped me, and there's a ton of books. I'm sure everyone's got their lists of amazing business books they've read, but the first one is The Servant Leader. It's an older book. It's been around for a while. It's pretty short, easy read, but it helps frame that mindset of you now are serving your team. That's huge. Another recent book, it's actually by Dave Ramsey.
Real quick, who's the author of that first one, The Servant Leader?
Oh my goodness.
Do you remember?
But
we'll look it up. I'll find it.
We'll look it up, yeah.
We'll put it in the show notes for you. Okay, go ahead. Second one.
And then Dave Ramsey released a book recently called Build a Business You Love, and he walks through the lessons he's learned in his many decades of business leadership. And it's a really remarkable book, especially as you build a team and scale and you're trying to figure out your company culture and values and figure out how to make this business last beyond just you. Very powerful book and lots of stuff in there.
Awesome. I might have to check that one out myself. Dave Ramsey's, he's got gold.
Yeah, I'm a big Ramsey fan.
Yeah, absolutely. Our guest this week, Chris Powell, Lighthouse Studios in the Seattle, Washington area. Chris, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on the podcast and sharing the things that you've been learning about hiring and leadership. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Craig. I really appreciate you having me on. It's a big honor to be on here with you.
Sure thing. Real quick, if somebody wants to get in contact with you or maybe pick your brain a little bit more on some of what you talked about, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Yeah, so you can email me directly at chris@lh.studio, or you can DM us at lhstudio.re on Instagram.
Very good. Very good. Again, our guest, Chris Powell. Chris, a pleasure. I would love to get you back on the podcast here because there was so much more in your presentation that I think we can learn and benefit from. So thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much, Craig. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up this week. Man, we've got so much good material coming for you from the presenters at REPP 2025. I'm guessing Todd is probably going to have a few more people from PMRE that he wants to have on. So make sure you stay tuned. If you found this podcast to be of benefit to you, to your business, be sure to give it a like on YouTube, subscribe. That way you get the notification bell when a new episode launches. And if you've found benefit and there's other people that you're friends with in this industry that maybe you've met through the various Facebook groups, feel free to share it as well. We want to be a benefit to you and continue to invest in this community. That's going to wrap it up for this week. Make sure that you take time. Let's see, this is going to be launching the day before Thanksgiving for those of us here in the U.S. Make sure you take time to be thankful for the blessings in your life and make sure you take a breath. Have a great week.
Thank you for joining us for the Spiro Podcast, Managing Your Real Estate Photography and Videography Business. This is a production of Spiro and WOW Video Tours. You can find out more about Spiro's real estate media business management software at our website, spiro.media.